Good afternoon. You're listening to the new WCEG Network on WCEGTalkRadio.com. Click the live stream tab or watch us live on your smart TV, YouTube, WCEG Network. I am Celeste Giordano, your show host, along with my co-host, Sara Poe, and we're the Global Legacy and Wealth Building. For the next 1 hour, we're the Worldwide Community Empowerment Group, where we speak life into the community. Please like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and on Instagram at WCEG_talk_radio and at WCEG Network. And last but not least, our disclaimer, the topics and opinions are those of the show host and guest and not WCEG Network. Thank you for your continued support. And we are so happy to be here with you today. Hello, Sara. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Good. And we have Aidan Anderson with us. How are you today, sir?
Doing well. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So, Sara, how's tax season going?
Oh, I'm barely alive, but you know.
It's all positive.
That's right.
Absolutely. And we have a great show lined up here today. I'm very, very excited about us interviewing Aidan Anderson with AidanCares.org. And this is going to be an amazing show. I've been watching this young man since he was very, very young. He says when he started 7, but I think I watched him when he was right at about 12 is when I first saw him at an event. So I'm very excited about that. But Sara, before we do get started, please tell us, the audience and our listeners, a little bit about you and how they can reach out to you, please.
Sure. I am Sara Poe with Poe's Accounting Services. I am a licensed CPA. We do taxes, payroll, bookkeeping, you name it. If it's involved with a small accounting firm, we'd love to help you. But we love to help the small business owner. We love to help them succeed and to grow, and that's what we're all about. My email is spo@poecpas.com, and our phone number is 770-545-8841, and we'd love to help you.
Absolutely. And I'm Celeste Giordano, a master sales strategist and business mentor, and I help business entrepreneurs, direct sales teams, and corporations exponentially increase sales and profit through lead generation, building relationships, and accountability. And again, this is the Global Legacy and Wealth Building Show, and we would like to thank our WCEG Network, Penny Rogers, and the board for allowing us to have this opportunity today. And we do this twice a month on the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of each month from 5 to 6. So we thank you very much. So Aidan, we would like to introduce you in a proper way. I was reading your bio and I was just so impressed with this bio that I thought, instead of talking from my heart, I'm going to read this, but then I'm going to talk from my heart, if that's okay with you.
Of course.
And the name sounds like a president already. Aidan Thomas Anderson. I think it's going to be one of our future presidents down the road.
No pressure though, right?
Absolutely. Aidan is now 20 years old, and he has been serving others with music since he was 8. With his mother, Torrin Anderson, he co-founded an awareness campaign aimed at imparting the necessity of joy and giving and healing the generational divide through service. It's called Aidan Cares, AidanCares.org. He began with raising $80 in his hat playing harmonica at age 7, and now is an accomplished singer, songwriter. He plans to continue with music and encouraging people of all ages to find their purpose in giving. He has given 4 TEDx talks and has shared his message to millions all over the globe. That's a round of applause right there.
Thank you.
He has inspired youth from 30 countries to start their own campaign of giving out of their passions. During this pandemic, he is mentoring youth and helping people of all ages find ways to give back to others. In June, he will be speaking at the YPO and leading workshops for parents and youth to help empower them to solve problems and change the world together. On behalf of WCEG Network and Sarah and I, Aidan, we'd like to welcome you to this hour. And what an amazing accomplishments. I just can't wait to get started and hear all about the things that you've accomplished. But I do want to share with our audience and listeners that when I retired back in, Lord, we won't put the date there when I retired, but when I started my business and consulting business, I believe about 8 years ago, I first heard you and saw you at a networking event of one of my dear friends, Araya McGarry's, and you played the ukulele, and I think you even played the harmonica for us. You did both, and I was just so impressed. You impressed upon my heart the passion that you have for serving and giving back at a young age. And that has so much to do, that says, for your parents that brought you up and raised you. So with that said, I would love for you to tell the audience just a little bit about yourself, if you would.
Yeah. So it all kind of started, and I say words like organic just to overcompensate for the fact of how little planning there was behind everything. It really just was a snowball effect. But growing up, my mom had always kind of modeled service to me. I grew up in a household where it was normal to go volunteer at homeless shelters or drop off towels at an animal shelter, and just to be in kind of constant service. And then I playing harmonica at a really young age. I was snooping around in my brother's room, and he said if I left his room, I could have his harmonica. And so I just kind of took it and off I went. And there was no hey, I'm gonna play an instrument. It was just, it seemed like a sweet deal because it was either getting thrown out or I could leave with something. So this kind of decision was made for me. And I think a really important fact is I was terrible at it for the longest time. It's not like I picked it up and I discovered that I was some kind of musical genius, because I'm definitely not. It was bad for a while, y'all. And so one night I was playing at this restaurant in Atlanta, and I was out down where the restrooms were, and I used to dress. I was a weird kid. I watched a lot of movies like Singing in the Rain and stuff like that. And so I just thought, well, that's how people should dress. So I would wear ties and a fedora, like a Bear Bryant fedora. And anyway, so I'm playing harmonica at this restaurant. It gets warm, so I take my hat off, start playing harmonica again really badly. But I guess I was cute when I was 7. It's safe to say I definitely peaked as a 7-year-old in the looks department, but that's okay. And so I started playing harmonica, and as people walked by, they're like, oh, look at this kid trying to get money, because there's my hat on the ground. And they're like, this is cool. We'll support this kid because clearly he has no talent. So he'll definitely need all the money he can get. And so they started putting money in my hat. And by the end of the night, I had over $80 or $80. And I was like, this is really cool, because now I can buy a car and a house and all the things that one needs as a 7-year-old, and I was just planning, my life out. And I was really quiet on the ride home, and I didn't say any of that to my mom. And then something hit me, and I realized that the things that I needed, I had. And I just remembered this one newsletter that she had read me that I think World Vision sent out about African orphans battling intestinal parasites. And so I remember just the stat that it was 4 pills for $1. So with my, my fortune, right, my $80, Mr. Rockefeller, that's me. I donated that money, and that one choice to give, it changed my life. And it was such a small thing, but it really did lay down the foundation for everything I've ever done. And it was just this one simple act that kind of put me on my path, And so someone heard about it. And it's like, hey, that's a really great story. And my mom had this client that was having a convention in town. He's like, we kind of have this lull in our program if Aidan wants to come up and tell that story and maybe play a song on harmonica. Again, I guess my mom's a heck of an agent, because I was still a terrible harmonica player at this point. But I went out with my fedora, the same get up, and played. And next thing I knew, more, thousands of dollars worth of donations came in for this project that I cared about. So then I realized that I could use something that I loved, or just my words, and make a difference in a bigger scale, And so it just snowballed from that. And then now here we are.
There we are. And how many years later?
Oh my gosh, 13, going on 13, which is so weird to say, that blows my mind.
Absolutely. Well, so let me ask you something. You say you went down and you were at this restaurant playing. Did your mom take you down there were you there originally to raise money for a
No, I was just there to
nonprofit?
eat a good meal. Honestly, yeah. My mom was doing restaurant PR for this restaurant called CNS Seafood and Vinings. And so I just figured wherever she went, there would probably be good food. And so I always tagged along and I just got bored at the table. So I played harmonica.
Oh, okay. Now,
Yeah. So some kids have a coloring book and I'm like, well, conveniently in my sport coat, let me whip out this little harmonica real quick. Yeah. And so that's what I did.
Well, you must have played pretty good because I think if you weren't good, they would have put you out of the restaurant there.
Either or, maybe I guess the cool thing about most art forms is it's the beauty's in the eye of the beholder. So I can say that it was loud and people are tone deaf, or we can say I was great, however, cup half full, cup half empty.
Yes.
Either or.
And I always say the cup's refillable.
Amen. Yeah, we'll take that one for sure.
We'll take that one. Absolutely. Sarah.
So I see that you and your mom have served side by side and put that above all else. What do you wish parents knew about putting service experiences, empathy, and compassion first for their children?
As far as what that looks like, I think we kind of have reached this like unprecedented time where it just seems like there's a great disconnect. Especially in my generation and this coming generation behind me. I don't even know what it's called. It seems like every generation has a fancy title now, but I think the biggest thing is so much more than words, it's actions. Like, I think it's very rare that a kid's just going to wake up and say, you know what, I really don't want to play video games. I actually want to go work at a humane society instead, unless they're exposed to that. And so, not to put everything on a parent, but it is kind of up to them to make a conscious decision and be as a family to say, you know what, I want my kids to be exposed to something more, something different. And I think the biggest thing with that is too, like, there's a way to not force it. And that is figuring out how to incorporate what you love. I think that if I wasn't using things that I was passionate about, I wouldn't be as happy to go about serving, it's all about using your passion to serve a greater good. And I think when you do that and when you establish that in your home, then it's not even like, all right, guys, we're going to go put on a hairnet and work at a soup kitchen. It's like you're loading up your car knowing that you're headed to do something as a family outing that you're all equally excited about. It's just a matter of doing it and being intentional with your time,
So would you say as a young child growing up, Aidan, so your mom instilled this into you? She took you places to serve?
Absolutely. Even at like a ridiculously young age, which I guess it wasn't all that ridiculous because something's got to stick, and she was really intentional about it. Because sometimes you do something, especially as kids, like one thing goes in one ear, then out the other. If it's just words, like it doesn't stick. It's like the snow in Georgia. But then other things are like, for me to be exposed and witnessing things firsthand, and not only the what, but the why. Like, we're doing this because, and she really laid that down. I tell people all the time, I don't feel particularly special, but I know that I'm rare. And I guess the object is to not be rare. And so that's what you want to see instilled in kids. It's just the opportunity presented to them to see if it's something they want to do and then figure out how to make the most out of it.
You used a big word just now, Aidan. You used the word why. What is your why?
My why? That's something that kind of gets, I feel like, redefined every day. Like, that's a daily thing. It's a very, a lot of people, they have like mission statements when this is the core of what we do always, but the world evolves and changes. So my why kind of varies, but at the end of the day, I just want to know that when my time's up on this planet, that I contributed to people making the most of their lives. And for me personally, I see all the pros of service. Like, I feel more whole as a person, and I feel like I have purpose and all these things that I wish that everyone could claim and could claim. And so that's a huge factor of it. I think when you see a problem and, then empathy isn't that much of a stretch if you can see a fixable issue and it's fixable because the how, so yeah.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure your why when you started, when you were younger and in the middle, and now what your why has changed dramatically. And, one thing that impresses me and impresses upon my heart, Aidan, is the fact of the younger generation. I'm very, very passionate about the younger generation, just like you are, and you want to give so much to the younger generation. And, somebody like you and who you are and who you've evolved into being isn't the norm for most children today. Or I say children, whether it be children when you get started, teenagers and young adults. Wouldn't you agree,
Right.
Sarah?
Yeah.
I mean, so,
I know just working with my grandkids, trying to get them into service projects, it was easier when they were younger. Now they're so involved in their own lives. I'm struggling to find things that interest them and that they just don't roll their eyes at, and because I want them to understand it's all about helping your fellow man all the time.
Right.
My mother instilled that in me, so I'm trying to do my part with my grandkids. Not that their parents don't, but I think it's good for all generations to work in a family to do that.
I agree.
From your perspective, Aidan, for our adult listeners out here, even if we have some listeners that aren't adults, what is your words of wisdom to parents that are looking to involve their children or who maybe never involved their children into service work? Coming from your heart, what would you say to parents looking at that?
Well, Miss Sarah made a really good point. She was just saying how, where people are invested in their own lives, and it's really true. And I'm not saying like there's a fault in being into what you're into, but if it stops at that, then you don't find yourself wanting to get outside of yourself, right? And so I think the biggest thing is, it's almost like not a narcissistic way to giving, but just to break that initial block of ice, you have to ask yourself, what does giving give you? And so I think it's about equipping people to find their why, and really listening to, the person who you're trying to get involved with something that's more than them. And if you love music, there's so many outlets to use music to help others. If you love animals, there's so many outlets. If you care about the environment. So it's just a matter of, okay, you're into what you're into, but that's not enough reason to not make a difference on this planet, because there's so many needs that need to be met. And it's no one person's job to meet all of them, but it is, I feel like, our job and just our humanity, obligation to humanity to do our part that's incorporated with what we love. And so that's why, like, when I would work on like school curriculums and stuff, it was never about, all right, guys, today we're going to assign everyone the same project and we're just going to assume that 400 people all like the exact same things. And this is great. So that's very cookie cutter, and it didn't work. And so what we would do is we'd sit down with each individual kid and we would kind of map it out. Like, all right, what does it look like for you to want to serve? Like, what do you care about? So we would write a little section and it's like, this is what you care about. And that's great. We'll put that over here. And then it would be like almost connecting the dots. Like, how do we get that over here, which is giving and service and making a difference. And two, like, you want to manage what you expect. Like, you don't want everyone to start a nonprofit because that's rare, and I get that. So don't expect your 7-year-old. Like, I remember I gave one speech and this guy was like, yeah, man, and you just make me want to go home and just spank the snot out of my child. And I was like, no, that's not the point, like, at all. Like, he was kidding, of course, but it's like, no, that's not the point. The point is taking the snowball effect and getting them to do something that they care about, And so I think that's the biggest aspect, and it goes across every generation too. I've noticed this, and because initially we set out and we thought, all right, we're going to teach my generation how to give. It's a great message, and I still stand by that. But then it's the little things too. Like, one time I was performing in this little street corner in London, actually, England, which was really cool. This guy later who heard me and I spoke with him, he sent a message on Facebook. He's from Budapest. And he said, I've never given anything in my life. Like, what does that even look like? How do I start? Like, he knew he was impacted, but he didn't have a reference point whatsoever. And so I would say incorporate your passion with service. And then it kind of answers the majority of the questions, I feel like.
Absolutely. So I can get back on point here and to go off of what you just said, because you were in London. So you had some big opportunities as a young child. What are some of your best childhood memories you take with you now?
Oh, wow. Lately I feel like I've been kind of a retrospective old man. I think that's what quarantine will do to you. It's been like this great schedule clear, and it's been devastating, but also it's been weird, And so I've just found myself like sitting outside in the warm sun, drinking coffee like an old man, and like looking back on life like, oh yeah, that was cool. That happened. And then Facebook and stuff doesn't help with the on this day 6 years ago you did that, and that's I don't know. So I guess some of the biggest things, working with the Tony Robbins Foundation was really cool. He's just an absolute juggernaut as far as changing the world. He's the man. And so I met him really young, and then he invited me to do some youth summits. And that was really amazing because the kids at his youth summit, it was the first time in my life that I'd ever met peers who were far beyond my skill set. Like they challenged the heck out of me as far as like the philanthropic, because I just had never seen it. They're out there in this world, but I had never seen kids with initiatives. I always felt so alienated and weird, frankly. But then I met these kids and they're all trying so hard and doing amazing projects. So that was incredible. And honestly, just like it's the little things that I remember. Like I'll remember one specific person that I'll meet in a hotel lobby at a convention or something like that, and just an interaction. But I think the biggest things too is like through life, like as you gain perspective, it does kind of shape you without you realizing it. And so it's hard to like single out specific events because I think I'm just overwhelmed and grateful for all the little things that have contributed to the big things, But yeah, the Anthony Robbins thing was cool. I got a blues scholarship for harmonica. I got a little bit better at harmonica. There's like a metaphor in there. If you practice, you do eventually get better. Thank God. I always tell people it sounded like there was a cat in pain whenever I played, and then it got a little bit better. But there's this blues scholarship that I got a couple of years in Clarksdale, Mississippi, and it was funded by Morgan Freeman, which was really cool. And you got to go down to the Delta and learn music at its core. So that stuff like that, just all the little things. I tell my mom it's such a weird thing that we've done. Slept in nursing homes and penthouses, like just saying yes to service, and it's just been crazy.
Absolutely. Sara.
And I tell my grandkids, when you see that one kid sitting by themselves or you see somebody being picked on, go be friendly to them because that could make all the difference in the world.
Absolutely.
Being kind every day to people, because I'm a hugger. Well, we can't hug right now, so that's just about to kill me. But right. I smile at people all the time.
For sure.
Walking down the street, passing them in the grocery store, whatever. I smile at people, and people sometimes just don't know how to handle that, right? So it puts them like, why are you smiling at me? I'm just trying to be kind in a different way. During Christmas time, trying to be nice to the store clerks who are getting bombarded or people are yelling at because they could be having a terrible day, but that one kind word can make all the difference in the world.
100%. I remember, and I love that. And what's crazy about that too is you say that and that makes so much sense, but then that's not common knowledge. Like we're entering like this weird time where like our normal, I think, needs to be redefined. One time I was in the dollar store around Christmas time, just getting like stocking stuffers for second cousins and stuff like that, as one does in the South. You gotta find all the family tree and make sure that you're looking out. And so I'm walking around and I'm on my phone, and I'm guilty of that. We live in a world where we start knowing the top of people's heads kind of like that instead of them, just because we're busy and we got these portable offices in our hand and we're, and so I'm literally bumping into things in the store. And my mom gave me that look that your parent gives you, like you will get hit with a shoe if you don't straighten out kind of look. And so I put my phone away. Yes, ma'am. And I was probably 13. And I looked up and I read the clerk's name tag and I said, "Hey, Miss Robin, how you doing today?" I said, I hope you're having a blessed holiday season. And this lady just started weeping. It was like an ugly cry with snot and like all that stuff. Just not a great, it wasn't graceful at all. And she said, "No one has acknowledged me today." And I'll never forget it. She said that I haven't even heard my name today. And thank you so much. And that just, it broke my heart more than anything. Like I felt good a little bit because it's like, okay, acknowledge this person, but it made me mainly sick because I think, all right, this is 5 o'clock in the afternoon. She's been there for a minute. People have walked in. And so you're totally right, Miss Sara. Like it is a matter of just stopping to be intentional with the person that you share this planet with. And it's not about, hey, I wrote a massive check to this charity. No, it's about what sense of humanity are you exercising to make people feel equally loved?
Right.
And that's huge.
Even if
Absolutely.
you're singing karaoke and you're sounding like dead cats.
Yeah, 100%.
And Sarah, I couldn't agree with you more. And same thing with Aidan. Speaking to people, we live in a world today that, whether you're going to the post office, the grocery store, you make eye contact with somebody. There's nothing, be kind. Hello, how are you today?
For sure.
And Aidan, I've taken a lot of business school classes, and one of the greatest things, the sweetest thing to anybody is their name. And to be able to call somebody's name out and just say, hey, Miss Sarah, hey, this is just as amazing for that person that day. Just like the experience you had, that person hadn't heard their name all day. No one acknowledged them. And
Right.
It's not just out in the everyday lifestyles of the stores we visit. I mean, it's like that in corporate America and businesses, that people are very unappreciative. And that's one thing that I learned at a very young age, is that you need to learn to appreciate people and love people. And we live in a world that a lot of people don't love people enough.
For sure. And I think to touch on that too, it's we get comfortable in our lives and we isolate. I tell people, I'm like, man, we were isolated way before quarantine.
Yeah.
We were in a bubble way before that. And just as far as like people, they get into their cliques and they ebb and flow this way, and they're stuck in it. And it takes something that seems radical to kind of mix it up, like, and so, like I'll think of stories where it's weird because I'll speak in these environments. I've done a lot of service in like the inner city, and people are just going through the absolute worst quality of life you've seen in the States. And there's more willing to give and help others because they are exposed to the need than the people who are driving around in the nice car in the suburbs. And it's just because if you get too comfortable, and that's no one's fault, for being comfortable, but if you get comfortable, then you get stagnant and you get caught up and you're not really worried about humanity. And it's as basic as loving on the person that's checking out your groceries. And it's as extreme as starting a charity that eases suffering, and I think we're losing ourselves a little bit and our comfort, and it's okay to stop and reevaluate and say, wait a minute, I don't want my life on this planet to look like that. I don't want to get caught up with people who act like me and think like me and only ever spend time with them. You're not called to be everyone's friend. I think that's important, but you are called to love everyone.
That's right.
And I think that's the biggest thing. Like I tell people all the time, like I don't feel like I need to hang out with the whole world. There are a lot of people that I'm sure we would not sync up very well, but it's not my job to be unloving to anyone in the world, or to throw my opinion and voice where it doesn't matter, and to spend time on things that don't amount to anything relevant. You know what I mean? So I think that's a huge thing. It's just like through all this, how can we connect to humanity? And I think it's incorporating our passion with a greater good.
Absolutely. And in my line of work, people still come into my office to pick up taxes or to do taxes. I'm a very people person, so I like that better than doing the taxes over Zoom or over the phone or whatever. But I have found that if you spend just an extra 5 or 10 minutes on an individual or a couple, and you take the time to learn about them and remember them from last time they were in here or whatever it may be, or it could be a woman who just lost her husband and is so unsure of her life and what she's doing. It's just to encourage her, right? We all need that encouragement at times. And I've learned over the years that it just could be an extra few little words. It can make all the difference in their life. Or if they feel that you weren't belittling them because they didn't understand, that's okay. We never know everything. Somebody asked me to do something the other day, and I said, you know what? Never done that before. I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And you figure it out, you go and you do it. But I like spending the time with people so that they get a glimpse of who I am and I get a glimpse of who they are, and they're welcome at my table.
Right.
Especially kids. Sometimes we just need, I need a little encouragement at times, but we all need that.
For sure. Just relationship,
Yeah, absolutely. So what is it like serving others in a pandemic and not traveling? How do you continue on your mission?
It's been really weird. I'll be honest with you. It's so strange to have life dramatically just shifted. And so the biggest thing though is a lot of things, they remain. I think most of us were shell shocked that we kind of lost a sense of just our sense of gravity almost in the world, but it's a lot of things are the same. Needs are still and greater. And so for me, it's been interesting because I feel like I've never spent a whole lot of time in my hometown. I think I've done more work in Texas than I have 10 minutes from my house, and that feels weird. And so the pandemic kind of stopped and allowed me to think about life a little bit, which is actually kind of nice, to not have your schedule so crazy so you can process some things. But for me, it's just been finding the local needs and to not give up on, to not get complacent, I guess, with how the world is, and to press on even in the middle of everything, So my mom, she started doing PR for this amazing food pantry that started in Sandy Springs, Georgia, called the Sandy Springs Mission. And literally it was just a couple of ladies that saw people who were out of work, hungry, and getting turned away from a soup kitchen. So they bought some groceries from Costco, and now it's turned into this feeding 200 people a day thing with stocked groceries. And so, the not traveling is weird as well, just because I love people and I miss interaction, and I miss, hearing people from different walks of life and immersing into something that's different from what I know. But at the end of the day, and I say this a lot, but it's really important if anyone takes anything, it's about finding your humanity. And sometimes it's about fighting for your humanity. It's so easy to sit, I call people armchair activists. They'll sit and they'll watch the news and they'll be like, we should really stop that, or that doesn't seem like it should be happening. But it's so radical to say, well, what if you were a part of changing that in some capacity, And I think that's the biggest thing is, while we're at home, how can we figure out how to make the world a little bit better, even from where we are? Because it is quite possible. So I've been reminding myself that. It's been hard, but that's an active thing that I try to remind myself on the daily,
So have you been doing some mission work during this quarantine, or are you doing it via Zoom or in person, or not at all?
A lot of local service projects for sure. I started teaching music and mentoring at the same time, which has been really great. Sometimes with Zoom, other times just social distance, at a park or something like that. And that's been really great. Just because, I love music, and it all started with this one kid. This mom was like, can you please teach my kid guitar? And I was like, absolutely, because it's not like I had a Rolodex full of things to do and people to call, like we're in a pandemic. So, it was a no-brainer. And I started teaching this kid and working with him, a couple of times a week. And then 3 months in, his mom was like, hey, I want you to know, like, his anxiety, he's not medicated for anxiety anymore. Or he's completely comfortable in his skin. And she's like, I think it's whatever y'all are doing. And so I've watched this kid start here, and then just his whole personality's changed because we're working on a skill and we're having these deep talks, and he's going about things differently. And so now I'm up to 11 students. And so I've been mentoring and working with these kids. And when I say mentoring, it's not like I'm right, you're wrong. I'm so much wiser than you guys. It's mainly just the conversation. Like, let's hear about it. Let's talk about life. Let's talk about giving. Let's figure out what you're about, what you're actually dealing with. It blows my mind. Maybe I was just a doofus growing up, but kids have so much depth now. And again, I sound like an old man, but like they really do. Like this 11-year-old was telling me the other day about how she kind of feels like she has to be a perfectionist because she doesn't feel comfortable when she doesn't do things the right way, because it bothers her when people think less of her. And she's 11. Literally, the conversation was,
Yeah.
You watching any good shows nowadays? And then went from that to that. And so it's crazy what happens when you just sit down and have like a meaningful conversation,
Why do you think that? I'm sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
Well, I think also because we've been at home for so long, we're missing out on some meaningful conversations that we would have had.
Right.
We're not having conversations as much because we're at home. We're not at school. We're not at a job where you stand by the water cooler and have those conversations, right?
Right.
And I think it has affected children more than it's affected adults by
I
not.
agree with that fully.
What I was going to ask was 11-year-old feeling that. Is that something that is peer pressure from kids in school, or is it coming from adults, from parents? What do you think?
I think it's definitely a case by case basis. I know her mom pretty well, and her mom's pretty terrific as far as that goes. But I think it's just sometimes we get a pattern, a rhythm in our head, and sometimes it stems from trauma, but sometimes it's just something that we've created. And in this case, she has like this little pattern in her head, and she just carries it with her. And because it's hard to be transparent and vulnerable, there's no opportunity to kind of break that cycle, I guess, that loop in her mind. And so she just gets to expand on it. Because I asked her, I'm like, have you felt like this for a while? And she says, yeah, for a really long time. And so we kind of talked it through a little bit, and yeah, it's surreal. And I think a lot of it too is social media. And I don't want to be,
There you go.
yeah, I don't want to be one of those guys, but I don't know. It just seems like everyone's posting their highlight reel on social
Yeah.
media.
Well, and that's what I was going to say is that, Sarah and I, you think you're an old man. We're very old ladies right here. You're a young man. But I know Sarah can remember this when we were growing up, and it's even prevalent today that in our generation, when you got into high school and maybe even before that, people were concerned about the ladies, about their weight and how they looked. And we grew up in an era of a lot of anorexia and things of this nature, just,
Right.
Trying to be like so-and-so. And I think today with social media and the things that's posted out there, it just puts a lot of pressure on our younger generation.
For sure.
And they need to know it's okay. You need to be you. You don't need to be that person over there or try to emulate that. You need to be you.
For sure.
And people love you just the way you are and for who you are.
Right.
I think,
Like you said, everybody's putting their super real out there. They're putting all the happy moments, the perfect moments. Life doesn't work that way. They're not showing that part. So people forget that those, when they happen to them, they're not exactly sure how to handle that.
Right. And it's a weird mixture too of like internet bullying and stuff, which is really present. For me, when that always happened, it was kind of like Teflon, just because I don't know, I'm not gonna let what one random person types on a comment, derail me. But for a lot of people, like that's a lot. Like if you're not secure with who you are because of what's going on at home, or something like that, having this what seems like an unbiased opinion thrown at you, like that can derail you. And then just that whole spirit of comparison. You sit down and I don't look like that. I don't get as much validation as that person. I don't have those things. Look at that person's family. There's so much more whole than my family. And so it's just this like endless list. And whether or not kids know to recognize it or not, the subliminal messaging behind it, it's detrimental if it's not addressed.
absolutely. And, a lot of people don't realize, this bullying. I mean, I've never grew up with that or anything like that, but I had a client that their granddaughter was being bullied, and she was in elementary school, middle school, maybe it was middle school. And I just scratching my head, some of the text messages and things that this younger generation would do. And it's just jaw dropping to realize that people can be that cruel and inhumane. But we need to love on these people. We don't want to get off on that subject right there.
Right.
But we definitely need to love on people. And I think the big thing is be proud of who you are. And I think, constantly telling your children, your grandchildren, and mentoring children, that, you are beautiful just the way you are, and to love them just the way they are.
And to be intentional and to single people out in a good way. Like at the start of quarantine, about 2 months in, I made a list on my phone and I shuffled it every week of just people I would send a random text to, just saying something, just because I knew that they were probably really suffering during this whole ordeal. And it wasn't because I thought they were suicidal or anything like that. It was just a simple, hey man, 3 months ago when we did that was really great. Thinking about that. I hope you have a blessed day. Or like, hey dude, this random things like that. And I think that that's social media initially. Now it's this beast, but it was initially like to connect with that random person they had a meaningful moment with 5 years ago and just following up. How are your
Uh,
grandkids? And now it's like this, you're not as pretty as them and you're, broke and you should feel insecure and all this stuff. And it's rough.
Absolutely. And one of the things with my clients that we talked about during this pandemic is we made 10 phone calls a day. And you call 3 family, call 3 business, and pick 4 people randomly that you see on social media that you maybe haven't spoken to, or they have an illness in the family or something, and just reach out, like what was the commercial, reach out and touch someone.
Yeah,
People really needed that because a lot of people were really suffering during this pandemic, mentally, physically, emotionally, whether it be adults all the way down to the younger generation. And I can only imagine how, the people that you've mentored, the things that they were going through.
for sure.
A lot of their parents maybe lost jobs and things of this nature, and you didn't know a lot about them. Maybe they needed food. I mean, you just don't know.
Right.
So anyways, let's get on here. Something very special happened. You have gotten a lot of media attention lately, including the Today Show, and there was a feature for about 5 minutes. What was that experience like?
That was, it's the kind of thing you think you're getting cranked called, like you're just sitting there and, like, hey, we're going to send you out and do a piece on you. And I'm like, yeah, buddy. Right after my luncheon with the Queen of England. That sounds great. Look forward to that. And so you're, I don't know if it's politically correct to talk about the royal family right now.
Yeah, right.
I don't know.
That's why we got a
if I don't offend one person, it's by the grace of God, honestly. Yeah. But anyway, so we get a call. Turns out it was legit, obviously. Went out and did that, and it's weird because you watch it, on your screen and then you're a part of it. But I think the coolest thing about it was just, I worked with Miss Savannah Guthrie in that one. And I think what's so great is you meet so many people who have this status and they turn out to be a jerk most of the time. And she is so sweet and just humble and broken. And I just absolutely loved working on that piece with her. And I got to work with the Ronald McDonald House, which is someone that I partner with quite a bit. Them on a national level at a couple of their sites, New Orleans, DC, New York. And so it was something that I was really passionate about then. And so it was just a awesome win for my life. It just, it was amazing. It was good.
Sarah?
So what are some of the things you think people need to realize about the necessity of giving?
That it is in fact a necessity.
Yeah.
I think we put things on hold because we don't see the urgency. And I'm not acting like things in a major political scale are our fault or things like that. But it's just there's so many things I don't think we realize how much we could be doing and how effortless it could be. I watch kids fall apart because they have no idea who they are, and so you could be a part of equipping them to find that. You see charities that literally shut down just because they were short a couple of grand at the end of the year and things like that. And so, you want to find bright spots in the world and then figure out how to preserve it and then expand on it. Because if you don't, then it gets really dim really, really quick. And so I think that's the biggest thing is realizing that it's a necessity, simply because if we all did our part, then we wouldn't be talking about these terrible things. And so I think there's that sense of we share this planet, and even though I'm not directly under fire, that doesn't mean things aren't burning, And so I think that's the biggest part of it.
One of the things that I say to people basically is, if we took this person who's hacking and scamming or whatever, and we turn that power into good, think what we could accomplish.
Right. Yeah, my papa used to always talk about that. He's like, man, people are so creative with being bad. It would make them sad, and we're still there. Like if we just use that brain power for something even remotely good. Yeah. And it's a spectrum. Like on this side, you have people who just straight up contribute to the problem and they know who they are. And we usually know who they are. And then you have the people all the way over here who are funding charities and and, you know, holding orphans and the commercials and stuff like that. And they're all the way over here. But to me, what scares me the most is the fringe down the middle, just unsure about life, not really interested in that, not really interested in that. They're just existing simply to exist. And I feel the worst for them, because what kind of quality of life is that? Like, you don't have any kind of, I want to do this because I need to do this, and because it's my purpose. I think as far as like, you know, us being neighborly, it's our job to edify and encourage people so that they can find that, you know, like that's why I love teaching music. I would never want to learn anything and not share it, because then it dies with me, and that's so scary.
Yes.
I was talking to this really cool story. This lady was talking about how these women in this really poor community in Houston, Texas, how those kids still grew up to be so much better than the kids in this really wealthy community in Houston, Texas. And it's because they had inherited wisdom. They had multi-generational people, you know, able to walk them through life. And they were just really about taking time to teach, because they knew a good thing. They wanted other people to know a good thing. And I think that's what we're missing in such a massive way, is that desire to not be content with keeping things to ourselves that are good.
Well, and that's so true. And, you know, some people, they don't know what they don't know. Some people didn't grow up where they learned about serving and giving.
Right.
You know, they maybe didn't grow up in a church, didn't learn about tithing or anything like that. So, you know, what do you see today in mentoring and serving with the younger generation? Do you feel that most of them are not aware of it and they have to be taught this, or it has to be in a shared experience with them? Or do you feel that it has been shared with them and it's a matter of needing guidance and wisdom?
I think it honestly, and this might seem like a cop out, but I think it's a true mix, right down the middle. Because you, even in different like national regions you explore, like growing up in the South, it looks so weird to other people because everyone is so friendly in a grocery store. They're like, "Oh, how you doing, sugar? Oh, I'm doing fine. How about them dogs the other night?" And like, it's complete stranger, you know. And then meanwhile, you go up north and you start talking to someone and you're like, "Oh, how you doing?" He goes, "I don't want to buy it. Whatever you're selling, I don't want it." And you're like, "Oh, okay." It doesn't make them wrong and you right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. That's
It's
true.
just it's cultural differences.
Yes.
And so for me, but there's some things, all right, and I'm gonna try to think of an eloquent way to say this with the amount of caffeine that I have in my system right now. There's some things that shouldn't be up to culture to determine, because at the end of the day, we are all the citizen of the same planet. Not to sound like
That's right.
but we are. And so some things are just a good thing and should be common knowledge. And I think for people, I feel like we fail when we make everything way more political than it needs to be. Sometimes that line in the sand doesn't need to be drawn. It's
That's
just
right.
like, this is a good thing. This is an unadulterated good thing and should be allowed to stay like that. I know that good thing, so let me teach it to you, you know? And so it's like that. And I think the issue is people say, like, we live in a world where I could say free guitar lessons and someone could read that and they'll be like, "I don't want guitar lessons. Like, you jerk." And it's like, okay, that wasn't for you necessarily. And that's all
That's
right.
right. That's
And
okay.
so people do that with things, but as far as like either you have the truth or you don't, like the truth is so beautiful in my opinion, because it's not like a cylinder where we walk around it and we all get a different side. You either have a truth or you don't. 2 + 2 is always 4. There's no, you know what I mean? Like, that's just what it boils down to. And so if we're talking about something like, hey, maybe we should balance the way we do social media and actually use it to validate and lift up people instead of creating a vain culture that tears other people down and makes people depressed, because we have clinical trials now that prove it does that. Or like, hey, maybe we know for a fact that this organization does amazing things and legitimately is trying to make the world a better place. So let's work with them and not against them. And I think it's okay to find those things and to say that, but people are too afraid to voice what's truly important. And so it's that weird mix of the, I've never heard that before, that's news. And then I have heard that, but I don't know what it looks like implementing that in my life. So we have to be vocal about the right things.
Okay. That's fair. So you've met a lot of celebrities in your time speaking at large events and performing. Who did you meet that gave you a standout moment?
Wow. I talked about Tony Robbins earlier. That was huge. I met Ed Sheeran a few summers ago, who was like the reason why I stopped playing harmonica and picked up other instruments, and he was just so humble and intentional with his time and just a really stellar human. And honestly, just as far as like impact, that meant so much to me. But then you meet people like Bernice King and some that I have like a solid relationship with, and they continue to inspire you because you know their heart really well and you watch how they handle certain things. Being a celebrity, I tell people all the time, I would take the money, but not the status 100%, just because it's a lot. There's a lot on you, especially in today's culture where it's like you're constantly under a microscope. So I watch people like, Bernice King, Dr. Bernice King, who they just handle situations with such poise, and regardless of what the world is saying, like they know what they're about. And so people like that, they just blow my mind. But definitely Tony Robbins, Dr. King, Ed Sheeran, all these people, like they just, I don't know. They're the kind of people where you watch how they live their life, and when they're intentional with you, it holds so much weight just because you know what they're about, and it kind of alters the way you view them.
Absolutely. Um, what are things you feel you have learned firsthand that feel lacking to most?
Lacking to most. I feel like that's one of those questions where it's like there's no way around it. I'm gonna look like I'm a conceited dude, acting like I got some kind of great knowledge, and it's like other people don't have that. I feel the need to say that I'm an idiot most of the time, but I guess what's lacking is just that sense of getting outside of yourself enough to contribute to solutions, or getting outside of you enough to redefine the culture that we live in that enables people to not look out for others. I think it's way too convenient now to not care, and it's very devastating. And so I think what's lacking the most is just that sense of I'm on this planet, and I want to do something that matters, instead of just getting comfortable with my own life that I've built for myself. Like, you can have it all, so why wouldn't you want it?
Yeah, I think sometimes we get so caught up in us that everything's about me,
Right.
and not. I need to think out, like you said, outside of me to help other people. It's not about me. It's about other people.
And I feel the need to say too, I'm not like villainizing those people, because we talked about it earlier. Like sometimes you're just not exposed to anything different.
Right.
Or like that man in Budapest who wrote me, he's like, I've never seen that. He's like, all right, I hear you, I'm impacted, but I don't know what it looks like to implement certain things in my life. And so I think that something that's really huge nowadays that I wish more people had, and something that I have to remind myself, to work on, is to just have an abundance of grace for others.
Yes.
It's so easy to write people off and condemn them. And I'm definitely guilty of that for sure. But then when you think, there's so many factors that go into people's choices and upbringing and the way they live, that it's, to me, really impossible just to write it off as under any one category. And so I think what I wish more people had is just that grace. We don't have to throw stones necessarily. We can stop and try to figure out how we can be more compassionate, regardless of how other people are. That it comes down to us anyways. So we should make the choices that benefit the world, and not looking so much or being so quick to tear other people down to make ourselves feel taller,
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm sorry, sir. Go ahead.
I just wrote down the word grace. So sometimes I need to be reminded of that, right?
For sure. Because it's hard. And honestly, like, people make it so easy to get mad nowadays, and we just had an election and all this stuff. And everyone's just got so much to say to other people. But if you look at it, they don't know each other enough to say the things that they say. And so it's just really sad. I think if we focused on grace, so that it would enable us to hear people's hearts a little bit better, or to have productive conversation, instead of if I talk longer than you, I'm right. It's just this, we're caught up in so many fallacies nowadays where think it's just so important to stop and say, all right, I'm gonna listen to you, even if I think you're wrong. And I'm gonna love you through it simply because we're both human. And at the core of everything, we have that, and that should be enough.
Absolutely.
For sure.
You know, what I was going to say, Sarah, when you were talking and Aidan was talking, is it's not about me, it's not about I, it's about we, us, and our, you know, of how we serve other people. It's always about the other person. You know, people don't care how much you know, do they know how much you care? And then you should always care more for other people. And I think that's so important. So, Aidan, we're getting close to the end of the hour here. How do you suggest we learn to touch more lives and less screens, as you have said tonight?
Right. You know, I think the biggest thing is visualize, get a piece of paper and just write out things. This sounds really corny, and part of it is, but just really write down the things that matter to you, and then try to figure out how to connect the dots on how to use those things to serve someone besides yourself. I think a lot of the times we just allow ourselves to get caught up in a schedule, or we're shell shocked by current events and stuff like that, that we don't get that perspective that's so needed to contribute to this world and even to our own lives. Like, I feel the need to say that, like, this whole service thing, like, it wasn't forced. Like, it's been the best part of my childhood, because I was living each day feeling like I was living out my purpose. And I think that everyone should be allowed that luxury, because it truly is. So I think the biggest thing is stop and just think for a second, figure out what truly matters to you, why it matters to you, and then kind of convert that into something that can contribute to the world, and in turn it contributes to yourself. You know, so figure out what makes you happy, what makes your heart tick, and don't sacrifice it because of your schedule, or because of how you're kind of feeling that day, or because of what's said from others or by others. Like, you know, some things are non-negotiable, and we need to establish those and then fight for them in a really loving way.
Absolutely. Do you have any events coming up this summer, or anything you want to tell our audience about?
Yeah, so that partnership with YPO is huge. The biggest thing is just kind of clearing way for that. I'll be working with the Ronald McDonald House a lot, just on some projects with them, their DC location, which I'm really excited about. And I guess the biggest project is working on myself, you know, how to wash off the whole COVID vibe where I got comfortable in sweatpants and not really doing much. So I gotta, I guess, pressure wash myself and change up my mind a bit, and then figure out how to go be a productive citizen. And so I think that's the biggest thing. And I encourage people to do that. You know, we're weathering this storm, but really what this defines us is how we handle it. So we're still in it, obviously, but I think some choices now can be made where we can make the most of our lives and just to fight for the things that we know we want to happen. And so that's what I'm working on. Honestly, I tell people all the time, like, this was a terrible thing that happened, but you know what? My schedule cleared, and it gave me the second to just stop and figure out my life a little bit and what my next steps should be. And so I just encourage people, make the most of where you are, even if it seems rough, just do the next right choice. But yeah, if there are any events, though, that wasn't much of a salesman or pitch. If there are any events that I'm doing, check out the website. I think I posted that in the chat, and we'll post it to the Facebook, which can be found on the website, aidancares.org, and all that stuff. I'm very transparent about what I'm up to. So if anyone's interested, go check it out.
Absolutely. And give us that website again, please.
Yep. It's Aidan, AIDAN, the Irish spelling, cares.org.
Very much. And Aidan, we just can't thank you enough for joining us here today. I know you were feeling a little under the weather. We were looking forward to hearing you play the harmonica or the ukulele, but we're not going to torture you today because you're not feeling, up to par on that.
Thank you.
But, I just want you to know on behalf of Sarah and I and the WCEG community how much our heart loves your heart and the servant heart that you have, the leadership that you are instilling into the younger generation as well as the older generation. And we just appreciate your time here today. And we look forward to talking with you with some future collaborations. For Sarah and I are co-founders of the Women of Community Impact, and we do a lot of work with the homeless shelters and sex trafficking And we look forward to partnering with you guys and collaborating in the future. And we're also looking at partnering with WCEG in a youth summit. And so in closing this out, I have one last question for you is, as a youth initiative, for people putting on a youth initiative, what is the number one thing that we need to give to the youth and the youth initiative?
Wow. I guess the opportunity and the education and wisdom to do good. A lot of people, their heads are so loud, there's so much running around in them. But if you provide that outlet to where they can kind of focus on one channel in their mind and do positive and meaningful things, I think it's everything. So with any initiative, just make sure they have the platform to do what's in their hearts to do,
Absolutely. Sarah, any closing comments?
I've loved meeting you today. You are full of great ideas and enthusiasm, and one day I'll get to hear that ukulele or the harmonica. I look forward to that.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate y'all putting up with me today. And it was just an absolute pleasure to have something to do that means something. And thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you, Aidan. We appreciate you. And you also have a YouTube channel, correct?
Yes, ma'am. And everything, when I say everything, like it's all on the website. So
website at Aidan, AIDANCARES.org, aidancares.org. Thank you so much. Sarah, thank you for being a lovely co-host. Thank you, Penny Rogers and our WCEG board and community for this hour. And then most importantly, the true champions are the listeners and the audience. We thank you tonight. And let's everyone have a wonderful and blessed day and have a wonderful